You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Friday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's going on in the world of vol? Well, let's find out together, shall we? It is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the ever engaging network, ever volatile network upon which so many of you are mainlining these days. Welcome to all of our pro folks out there. Hope you're having a good trading week. Hope all of you out there are having great trading weeks out there. Remember, if you like what you hear, throw some stars, a like, a comment, whatever your platform lets you do. If it's YouTube, one of the many YouTube listeners out there these days, throw a comment or a like. Whatever the heck they want you to do over there. It's changing all the time. Of course, if you're listening on one of your many other platforms, leave some reviews. If you want to leave some stars in our app store, whatever floats your boat, whatever allows new people to continue to discover the content, we do appreciate it. And then, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you don't want your broadcast week to end with Volatility Views. And why would you, quite frankly? So much great content coming at you a little bit later today, including the one, the only, the unprecedented, the unbeatable Options Oddities. Then join us over there at theoptionsinsider.com/pro, or for all you awesome cool kids out there, /secret club. Once you're there, you're going to click on that join link. You're going to go pro. First off, it's going to give you access to 200 plus exclusive episodes already sitting there the second you hit that button. So we will have you covered with content. And then, of course, you get more 2 exclusive shows every week. Great pro Q&As. You like vol? You listening to this show, you probably do. We've had Scott Nations. We've had Tony Saliba. We've had just about every vol person you could think of. Dr. VIX, you name it. They're exclusively answering your questions. In fact, all that stuff Russell was doing for the first half of the year with that long-term VIX hedge and rolling it and the entirety of his Substack and everything else, that all came from a question from our pro Q&A session. So if you folks have questions about vol or about trading or about any other aspect of the world of derivatives, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Those pro Q&A sessions, I can't stress it enough. There really is nothing else like them. You get to pick the brains of some of the best people in the world of options and derivatives. And we bring them here exclusively for you folks to just pick their brains. And they're nice enough to come over and over again because they love it. Because you folks ask awesome questions. So you want to be part of that party. You want to see the, 10 million other questions they've already answered that are sitting there waiting for you. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And of course, lest I forget Options Oddities, we wrap up the week with a whole bunch of dangerous trades that we're looking at saying, maybe we want to do these. A lot of fun, a lot of trouble we get up to over there in Options Oddities. I'm having a little fun today with the intro, listeners, because this is a rare treat for me. Usually I'm kicking it out here and we're welcoming on guests and all my other cohorts out there. But, it's the end of the Fed week, which means I get to have a little fun flying solo on Vol Views this week. So we're going to have a fun kind of Just the Facts, ma'am edition of Vol Views. So let's get to it right now. A little bit of the old Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck was going on this week from a vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity perspective. And spoiler alert, quite a bit. Of course, it was Fed week this week. Usually we see a lot of paper, a lot of action out there pre and post Fed, and this week was no exception. We have mostly been trending green for pretty much every week for the better part of the last few months, and certainly for the lion's share of this year. It's been kind of a gentle, sometimes not so gentle drift to the upside. Everyone's got to buy it. You got to have your AI, got to have whatever the trend, the fad of the day is, getting things green out there week after week, month after month. So we've kind of gotten used to that out there now, except when Powell and company come to roost. That's when things usually get a little bit more dicey out there. We see a little bit more red on the screen. We see vol get a little bit frothier. And that was pretty much the script this week. Powell and company holding court, announcing their decision on Wednesday. And the market, it's funny. We were joking about this on our TWIFO program and on our Option Block program. We look at the FedWatch tool all the time. If you're not checking that out, listeners, cmegroup.com/FedWatch. A great tool to tell you exactly what the market is pricing in terms of probabilities for the Fed. If you hear these numbers and probabilities being quoted on outlets like CNBC or pretty much anywhere else in the financial media, chances are it's coming from the FedWatch tool. It's a great tool. This was the most unanimity I've ever seen in the FedWatch tool. 99% probability they were pricing in that the Fed was going to sit on their hands. Only a 1%. Usually you got at least 5 or 10% of something else happening. This time, no. Only 1% chance. And that was for 25 basis point raise. And that was it. That was all they were pricing in. So the Fed pretty much meeting expectations out there by sitting on their hands. It was the comments that came afterwards that seemed to really throw the market into a tizzy. And I've been joking for a while here on the network, this market, this omnipresent green bullish market has kind of been whistling past the graveyard. It was a joke, but really only a half joke. And it seems like some of that catching up with the market this week. Not liking Powell's more hawkish tone, the old higher for longer trope, which people seem to have put behind them, suddenly back in the forefront again. Markets got spooked after a brief period of vacillation out there post-announcement. We saw the trend start moving firmly into the red on Wednesday, continuing aggressively again. Yesterday, S&P off over 1%, NASDAQ off well over 1% at one point. Dow being the rare laggard of this sell-off, which is somewhat interesting and or surprising. Coming into the end of the week now, listeners, and we have seen a little bit of cessation of hostilities, at least for now. The S&P, and a lot of people were watching that 43.5 level. How would we react to that? Would we bounce off that? The answer was no. We blew right through it to the dark side. And then coming in today, listeners, we are starting a little bit of the old climb. S&P still below the 43.5 level, but just barely. 43.46 when we kicked off the show, up about 16 handles, or about 1/3%. So getting back some of what it's given up. Of course, 43.5 and below. I mean, we were at 4,500 and threatening 45.5 not too long ago. So a little bit of dark side here on the S&P to end the week, even if we are, of course, this final session, at least for right now, looking a little bit green. The Dow up about 0.1%. And the NASDAQ, as it is usually want to do, up about 0.2%, so leading the charge to the upside, but still going to be a net red week. Haven't seen one of those in quite some time, so some of that may be causing some folks to second guess some of their bearish prognostications. I do feel for our buddy, the once and future Dr. VIX, who said on this show and on TWIFO multiple times that he was short the market, but was going to get out when VIX closed in a 12 handle. And there were a couple other indicators he included in there as well. But the big leading indicator was VIX closing at a 12 handle. I think it closed in the 1290 or 1270 range not too long ago. And that was it. That caused him to get out. And then, of course, a few weeks later, we saw the nice move he was looking for in the right direction. So, yeah, sometimes it's challenging. It's challenging for all of us. I put on a little bit of a flyer, and we'll get to some VIX options later. Going into the Fed, I could not resist a little bit of a nibble to vol downside just for fun. Just to see what was going on. And, of course, it looked pretty good in the early blush because they were pricing in so much juice in this Fed move. But the upside was very juicy this week in VIX land. But we'll get a little bit of downside for a little bit of a cheap nibble. And it looked pretty good for a minute until it didn't. But a challenging one. We'll get to all that action in a little bit. First, let's break down the vol landscape right now. When we kicked off the show, VIX cash at a 16 even. Up 2.5 points. It's been a little while since we've seen a 16 handle, listeners. And again, up 2.5 points from where we were just this time last week. Let's take a look really quickly. Let's see how high we got intra-week. 17.25 roughly. That was the high yesterday. Actually, looks like a little higher. Looks like it got about 17.5. So yeah, a little bit more juice on the screen. Obviously, giving some of that up going into the weekend. Is it going to be enough to salvage my VIX puts? Luckily, I got another week on those, so we shall see. I had some VXX put fly as well. I do think it's a little bit too late for that, but we shall see. VVIX 88 when we kicked off the show, up about 3 points there. And our old friend VOLQ, a.k.a. the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ, at a 19 even. A lot of even numbers on the show today, up 2.5 points as well. So VIX and VOLQ both moving in lockstep points-wise this week. So that spread pretty much remaining the same this week. Interesting stuff. Let's get on out to the land of the volatility surface, see what's cooking out there this week, friends. I've often said on the show, the answer to all your vol questions, lurking somewhere in that volatility term structure. You just got to figure out how to decipher it. And for a while there, we've been trying to decipher what the vol market is telling us in Q1 of next year. It does seem like they're pricing in something aberrant, something interesting, something potentially catastrophic or scary out there, because that Q1 is where the vol futures have been north of 20 forever, except for this week, listeners. We are back below it, and you can go all the way out to May of next year, and you don't get a 20 handle. You get pretty darn close. You get out to May, you get about a 1980, so you're kissing a 20 handle. But right now, the entire term structure, at least for the portion we concern ourselves with here on the show, all below that 20 handle. We have that front OCC future. Remember, September rolling off the board this week. So October slotting into the pole position, getting a nice hefty boost up 1.5 points, almost at a 16.97 when we kicked off the show today. That no future also inhaling a little bit this week, up 1.3 points. So you get a little bit of juice to that front end of the curve, but not quite backward, at least not quite yet. And you go all the way out again to May, you're looking at almost a 20. So you do still have a nice healthy slope out to Q1 into Q2 of next year. Intriguing stuff out there as we keep on rolling. Let's go out to the mothership, the big dog, VIX options. Let's see how big it was this week. And spoiler alert, it's Fed week, so we saw some numbers. In fact, that is continuing out there today, which is interesting. VIX managing to look pretty active out there today again, even though we are kind of just gently drifting up here into the weekend. Right now, we have 512,000 contracts on the tape. That's good because the ADV has moved in the wrong direction. It is exactly, let's see, where are we right now? The ADV 657. So that puts it up 57,000 contracts because we were at exactly 600K this time last week. So had a feeling, given this week's action, we were going to see that ADV start to move in the right direction, and that's pretty much what we saw. Before we get into that action, let's break down the top size positions. What's open for size right now in VIX options? Obviously, September rolling off the board, taking some OI with it. So we were at north of 14 million contracts open in VIX recently. Right now, about 11.6 million total. Still hefty, but not quite as robust. And in terms of size positions, if you were coming this week saying, maybe I'll look for a put or two, you're looking in the wrong place. Look elsewhere, listeners. It is 10-0, all calls all the time. Read into that what you will, listeners. It cost you 194,000 contracts to break into the top 10 right now, which also is fairly hefty. Usually we see, VIX 150, 160, maybe 170 if things are getting frothy. 194,000 contracts is what it cost you to break into the top 10. So we got some beefy positions open in VIX still right now. The number 10, that gets you to the D's 25s, listeners. Interesting strike, interesting month. A lot of things interesting about that. Number 9, 205,000 of the OCT 25. So maybe you like your 25s, but you like them a little bit closer to the fire. Allow me to present number 9, the October 25s. Which of those you like better, listeners? Number 8, 210,000 of the March 47 halves. And if those sound intriguing to you, but maybe you want something a little bit closer, a little bit more gamma, slightly, not much. Allow me to present perhaps the Jan 47 halves. Number 7, 216,000 contracts there as well. So interesting strikes, interesting months already, and we've only done the bottom 4 here. Number 6, 220,000 of the D's 45s. Now we're cooking with gas. Number 5, 222,000 of the October 45s. We have all these matching strikes this week. It's kind of interesting. Number 4, 259,000 of the D's 40s. Number 3, you love them, my old favorite, 280,000 of the no 47 halves. Number 2, 307,000 of the D's 35s. And the number 1 big dog size position in VIX options right now. I gave you a hint already. It's not a put. It's a call. It's the October 20s, 316,000 of those. If you look back historically, maybe not surprising that 20 strike, it has that psychological importance to a lot of people out there. They're looking at upside. They like to go at the round numbers. So the 20 strike dominating our list this week. Maybe not surprising. Will we threaten that? Didn't quite get there this week, but 17.5, that's respectable. Intriguing stuff. You have some upside open in VIX right now? I'm curious, listeners. Hit us up. Let us know. Let's get out to the action that is lighting things up out there this week in the big dog. Listeners, let's start with today. Obviously, like we said, 512,000 contracts on the tape in VIX land, including the big dog today. We are finding some puts out there today. Listen, it looks like these puts actually going up fairly recently because these were not up right when we started the show. We have 35,000 of the October 15 puts for number 1 today, listeners, followed by number 2, 34,000 of the D's 19 calls. Number 3, 27,000 of the October 20s. Number 4, 25,000 of the October 30s. Maybe some vertical action going up there. And the number 5, most active position out there today, we've got 25,000 as well of the Feb 30s. So interesting months and or strikes out there today. Let's look really quickly to see what's cooking from a spread perspective out there today. Jan 30s were part of that spread. I'm trying to find. Yeah, it was a Jan, Feb 30. 10,000 by 18,000 times. Interesting. Looks like it might be closing on some of those because got some OI on both of those strikes. So interesting stuff going up today. Yesterday, I think, is the day a lot of you are going to have questions about because aggressive sell-off day. Also, a pretty action-packed day out there yesterday as well. 1.26 million contracts on the tape yesterday, listeners. So this is kind of repeating a pattern we've seen for a while as well. We could threaten 1 million sometimes with some other aberrant macro issues, but usually it takes the Fed, Mr. Powell and company, to really drive us over the 1M level in VIX land. And they did it again this week, Thursday, 1.26 million. The big dog yesterday, listeners, was the OX 17 puts, 96,000 of those bad boys going up. Interesting, because we had vol spiking. Are folks bailing on those puts? Are they loading up for a rainy day out there? Number 2, 88,000 of the October 15 puts. Number 3, 69,000 of the Nov 17 puts. So quite the put palooza going up yesterday, listeners. Then we have 63,000 of the October 17 calls. So 17 strike kind of across the board. Again, we got up there. It was kind of the at-the-money strike for a while. Maybe not entirely surprising that it was dominating the tape, but haven't seen a lot of 17s lighting it up lately. And then the number 5 most active contract yesterday, 52,000 of the October 14 puts. It's like we had a 17 put spread going up yesterday, October, November, 20,000 times. Paper doing it for 15 cents, so that accounts for some of that action we saw out there yesterday. We had also an OCK 15-18 ratio put spread, 1 by 2, 20,000 by 10,000 contracts going up for $1.13. It's like paper net buying that bad boy. So that accounts for some of that put action we saw out there yesterday. Also had an OCK 23-30, a 1 by 2 call spread. So paper buying that bad boy as well for a whopping 2 cents. So doing it for pretty much even money, 8,000 by 16,000 times. So interesting stuff going up yesterday. Again, a big day. It's kind of like looking into the hurricane to find individual trades out there. But action-packed nonetheless. Wednesday, again, the day everyone was waiting for, decision day. Usually the first half of the session, not very action-packed because everybody's waiting with bated breath to see what Powell and company are up to. Then the second half of the session, usually a bit of a banger. And that's pretty much how it played out on Wednesday, listeners. A decently active day, not quite the 1M level of Thursday, but an action-packed day nonetheless. 777,000 contracts on the tape. Listeners, the big dog on Wednesday, almost 41,000 of the OCK 17 calls. So once again, that 17 strike holding a certain fascination for the audience out there. Number 2, 39,000 of the no 17. So do I smell a bit of a calendar and or roll? Let's see. Number 3, 37,000 of the OCK 23s. Number 4, 30,000 of the NOV 47 halves. My old friend, my favorites. And number 5, 29,000 of the October 12 puts. Yeah, looks like the 17s were going up as part of a spread. Maybe a bit of a, yeah, looks like a 16-17 vertical versus the 16 puts. So it looks like maybe they bought the 16 straddle, actually, about 17 to 18,000 times, and then sold 2x of the 17 calls against it. So it was roughly 17 to 18,000 of the straddle versus 35,000 of the NOV 17 calls, all done on the NOV 15th expiration. Interesting if that's the case. If they are doing that, they're not giving themselves a lot of room to run to the upside. Let's just see if there's any other secret legs to that spread. I don't see any, but yeah, a fascinating one. A variation on the ratio theme we've come to know and love out here in VIX land, but not just straight a 1 by 2. Now it's a bit of a, not quite even a ratio iron condor because there is no downside leg, but intriguing stuff out there nonetheless. You like that, listeners? Straddle with the upside kicker. I don't know if I love that. You're giving up all your upside there. I mean, they got those 17 calls for $1.63, so they got that straddle not quite for free, but pretty darn close. So you're really just financing a cheap swing at the bat for the puts. Hopefully you got a future or something in your back pocket to protect against that 2x17 that you're short. So is it really just financing a put against your future? Intriguing position. We don't see that going up too often out there, but hey, that's what you get on Fed days out there, listeners. Tuesday, Tuesday is a weird day. It's a day where the first day of deliberations, people are waiting for the announcement on Wednesday. Can't really expect a heck of a lot of paper usually on Tuesday, but this week they broke the mold. They said, hold the phone. We're going to put up some numbers. 1.44 million contracts going up on Tuesday. So in a weird turnabout, Tuesday actually outpacing Wednesday and Thursday from a volume perspective, and one of the busiest days we have seen in quite some time out there in VIX land. The big dog on Tuesday, 64, almost 65,000 of the SEP 14 puts, followed by 60,000 for number 2 of the March 47 halves. Number 3, also 60,000 of the OCK 16, so that's kind of our magic number on Tuesday. Number 4, we've got the Jan 20s going up 48,000 times. And number 5, the NOV 17 calls going up 46,000 times. Let's just look here really quickly. Yeah, there's spreads for days here going up, listeners. 37,500. What looks like the April. Looks like we got a roll. Yeah, we have the Jan. That's why we have so much paper. Jan 20 out to, could be, it looks like a bit of a combo roll out there. About 150,000 contracts right there. Hence the action we saw out there. The big dog, though, yeah, looks like the March 47 half, 60,000 of those. Looks like paper, probably buying those. Interesting paper out there on Tuesday, listeners. And Monday, no slouch itself. Usually Monday heading into a Fed week, who's putting up a lot of size? Monday, you actually had decent paper. It was north of the ADV, 627,000 contracts on the tape for Monday. The big dog on Monday, 52,000 of the SEP 14 puts, followed by number 2, 38,000 of the SEP 15 calls. Number 3, 28,000 of the OCT 21s. Number 4, 23,000 of the SEP 15 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a surprisingly active Monday, 19,000 of the October 15 puts. Let's run into some of your other favorites out there, listeners. SVIX, 29.5 when we kicked off the show, down 3.25 points. As we are coming into the second half of the show here, we're seeing it at about exactly at 29. So it's given up another half point. So that puts it down 3.75 on the week there. So our old friend SVIX can go down, listeners. Can't really do a lot of paper, though. For whatever reason, this thing can't get out of its own way from a volume perspective. Only 1,400 contracts today. Even though the ADV finally getting a bit of a boost, is 2,500 contracts now, up about 500 from this time last week. So Fed Week managed to boost it a little bit. SEP off the board. We know the deal. Our much beloved, never forgotten SEP 35s. They are gone now, listeners. They have expired. We talked about that saga. Does seem like at least a chunk of them were overwritten, so in which case the folks were praying that they weren't breaking through that strike. I got a feeling if you had some SVIX and it broke through 35 and you had to let it go at that level, you wouldn't be too brokenhearted at the end of the day. But we didn't get there. We got pretty darn close. I think 33.75, somewhere along those lines is the all-time high. 33.5, 33.53. So we got within spitting distance of the 35s, which quite frankly is much closer than I know a lot of our listeners thought for those SEP 35s. Now, the other question I had with the people who put those on, are they going to reopen? So far, they haven't done anything with those. And looking right now, the top position in SVIX options right now are 6,100 of the OCT 25 puts. So doesn't seem like, at least for right now, they are reestablishing anything to the upside. Number 2, 1,500 of the DEES 10 puts. Those have been open for a while. And number 3, 1,000 of the DEES 24 puts. Intriguing stuff for good old SVIX. Yeah, I know. I wish we had weeklies. I wish we had more stuff going on out there as well. For all the Sturm and Drang about SVIX when it launched, it hasn't really lived up to the hype, at least not yet. Certainly not from an options volume perspective. If you just bought and held it, it's lived up to your hype. You're having a good year. But outside of that, I have to imagine most of you have overwritten calls and gotten out of it now as well. If you haven't, I'm curious, or maybe if you have, let us know. I know a lot of you wrote in when it hit the 17 level. That was a pretty high level. A lot of you hit calls then. Certainly when it broke into the low 20s, a lot of you were overriding calls aggressively. So most of you are probably out at this level. But hey, I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know with what levels you're working with right now in SVIX, if you're still in it at all. UVIX right now, this is one of those ones where we kind of have said we've washed our hands of it. But it's got a little bit of life this week. 3.25 when we kicked off the show, and still hanging out there right now. Up about half a point this week. So it's something. It's not much, but it's something. It's better than a 2-handle. I don't know what they're doing with this. I don't know when, if ever, they're going to reverse split this thing. Maybe they're just deciding this thing's not worth the hassle, and they're just going to let it go to 0. I don't know what they're doing, but right now, letting it languish sub 5 for months, not a good plan. The ADV right now, 9,700, down about 1,300. So again, of course that's going to go down. The use case for options diminishes with every tick closer to 0. So no surprise there that folks aren't slinging the options, and they're not going to until you reverse split it. And let's not get cute. Let's not do a crappy little 10-1. Let's at least go 15. Maybe let's hope, God, let's go 20. Let's go big. Go big or go home with UVIX. Can you imagine that? 20 for 1. UVIX at a 60. The things you could do, listeners. I know a lot of our listeners just salivating at the prospect. Don't let you get too excited, because who knows if they're even going to do anything with this thing. But we can dream, can't we, here on the show, listeners? What's this show for, if not to prompt a little volatility dreaming out there? UVIX size positions such as they are, 5,600 of the OCT 3s. That's a big dog out there. Followed by number 2, 3,600 of the NOV 8s. And number 3, 2,600 of the October 8s. the 8s. Let's hope for their sake, listeners, that they overwrote the hell out of those and they are just laughing all the way to the bank. Looks like they traded a good chunk of those just last week. 1,000 of them traded last week. The 8s. Let's see what the 8s are going up for. Oh, paper buying them for 20 cents. 1,000 times last week, listeners. The Nove 8s for 20 cents. You like those, listeners? I don't love them. I have to admit. I know I say all the time, don't be naked short units, but hey, you buy something, you sell the 8s against it. I don't hate that at all. Very interesting. The OK 8s also open about 3,000 times. Let's look really quickly here. Yeah, they opened those a couple of weeks ago, too. On the 6th of September. Paper buying those as well, also for that magic price of 20 cents. So someone's got an axe to grind in UVIX, listeners, on the H strike, buying a bunch of them in Nove and in October for 20 cents over the last couple of weeks. Interesting. Not my favorite trade. I get it. It's a levered product. You got to have a lot of lifting to get UVIX back up to 8. And you got to be at that point, what's going on in VIX, what's going on in all these other products. You can probably do a lot better in a lot of those others. But I guess if you want a cheap, nigh on ridiculous flyer, the 8 calls for 20 cents. Ugh. Yeah, I have a hard time loving those. But if that's you, listeners, hey, to each their own out there. UVXY product that got a little bit of juice back out here this week, and it seems to be continuing today. It was 15.15 when we kicked off the show, up about 1 3/4 points. And as of right now, it's at about 15.75. So gaining another about 0.6 of a point. So up about 2.3 points on the week. So UVXY getting a little bit of love. Part of that, listeners, is because the rally is starting to mitigate. Dow has now turned red, and the S&P is kind of unched. So that little bit of optimism, that little bit of ray of sunshine, any hope I had for my VXX put fly going the way of the dodo as the market turning red yet again. So for all you bears out there in the market, you're welcome. Because I knew once I nibbled on a little bit of vol downside this week, that was it. That was going to be the catalyst. Market's red, vol green for the rest of the week. So if you're looking for a little bit of downside, you're heavily short, allow me to just say you're welcome out there. UVXY doing some numbers, 98,000 contracts on the tape when we kicked off the show. Let's see if more have gone up. And the answer is, yeah, 123,000 contracts on the tape as of right now. The ADV is only 111,000, so that's actually down 2,000 on a Fed week. That's interesting. But looks like we're going to beat that today. Top size positions in UVXY. Again, this is all this kind of pre-split adjusted noise. You got to go all the way down to number 5 to find the first and only non-split adjusted position. About 9,000 of the SEP 15 puts, and those are going the way of the dodo today. Again, these products, such heartbreakers, listeners. You know, that trade was looking pretty good even at showtime. I'm assuming they probably bought those because that's usually how they went up. Yeah, they went up 15,000 times. Oh, yesterday. Let's see what they put these bad boys on for. And I don't mean to laugh, listeners. I feel your pain. Oh, you know what? Looks like they were selling them for around 48 cents, 33 cents, 39 cents. Again, a total of 15,000. So pretty action-packed day. They started off hitting the bid for 48 cents, and they kind of crushed them all the way down. They got some off for 55 cents, so good for them. Crushed them down to 29, 28 cents. So in that case, they're loving themselves a little bit of today's action. I apologize. Usually folks are loading up on these things, and then we get these last-minute moves in these products on expiration day that wipes out everything. That's why we had someone write in a little while ago with their long-term UVXY trade. I'm a little bit iffy on those right now just because we've seen this happen so many times. You have a trade go your way, let's say, for a better part of a year. And then the last week or two leading into, usually it's Jan expiration, but could be whenever the expiration cycle you pick is. Something crazy happens, Putin rolls tank, something else happens, and vol pops, or we get a big move, and the entirety of the trade that you had on that worked well, wiped out in a couple of sessions. So I call these products heartbreakers for a reason. This move today, if you had bought these puts yesterday, it certainly qualified. Looks like our friend got the memo. Getting a little bit getting a little bit close to the fire there, blasting out these 15 puts when UVXY was 15.14 with 1 day to go. He liked that juice. He thought, you know what, I'm here for it. I'm going to sell 15,000 of these freaking things. And hey, you know what? Hats off to you. It's working out at least so far. My advice to you, though, take advantage of this pop and get the hell out of Dodge. Let's look really quickly and see if they have closed anything today, listeners. Yeah, 8,700 of them have gone up today. So hopefully they're buying them back and laughing all the way to the bank. If they bought them back a little bit earlier, maybe not for the best price. So take advantage of this pop now and get the rest off while the getting is good. Speaking of getting, and it being good or perhaps not, I don't think my getting is going to be good in VXX, listeners. Yeah, it was 22.20 when we kicked off the show. That puts it up 1.7 points. It is now 22.80. That puts it up net 2.3 points on the week. So on my downside, put fly, a little bit of a flyer, pun intended, post-Fed. Not gonna work out. Say love you. That's why I fly this stuff off, listeners. I've learned over the years, bitter experience in the vol space. You sling naked in one of these directions, long premium, when you got a really good inclination that something's going to go your way. If you're taking a bit of a flyer, having a little bit of fun, best to fly some of this stuff off. Take advantage of the overpriced juice in the wings to offset your outlay, and that's what I did. So no harm, no foul on this one. Let's look out here right now in terms of action for VXX. And this is also another reason why I kept it small and flied it off, listeners. This is my first official foray back into the product that I swore off a year ago. I said, I'm never trading this stupid thing again. F Barclays, F all these people messing with the product. I'm done with these Franken products. And yet, they, like Michael Corleone, they pulled me back in because the thing has started to do what it's supposed to do again. But I'm not going to put a ton of money into it. I'm not going to put size positions. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to spread off because I still don't trust it entirely. But for little nibbles here or there, fun Fed week trades, it kind of does what it's supposed to do again. So, again, caveat emptor with this thing, but intriguing nonetheless. 107,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV, 83,000, up 9,000. So, starting to move in the right direction again. Still, again, a pale shadow from the 400K days we used to talk about a few years ago when VIX and VXX would go toe-to-toe volume-wise. Not going to see that, I don't think, ever again, unless there's really a huge influx of trust. When we had Dr. VIX on the show, he's been hitting the conference rounds for us lately, and he says people talking about VXX, the number one issue they bring up is trust, and I get it. It makes total sense to me. I still don't trust this thing entirely, enough to do little nibbles, but that's really kind of about it. But intriguing stuff nonetheless. Someone trusts him out in DEES, though, the big position out there right now, the top position in VXX, 35,000 of the DEES 15 puts. Let's pull those bad boys up, too. It passes prologue. They're probably buying those bad boys. But, hey, I was surprised with UVXY, so I'm willing to keep an open mind on these bad boys. And looks like these DEES 15 puts opened fairly recently. September 13th, they put up 20,000 of these bad boys. Put up the rest, the other 15,000 over the next couple of sessions. Let's see what they were up to out here, shall we, listeners? Looks like they did them for about 27 cents. Looks like they probably bought these, which again is what I expected. Yeah, they're pretty decently tight market actually out the D's. 24 at 29, and they went up 20,000 times for 27 cents. So it looks like lifting. Let's see if the rest of the paper we can see. Yeah, it looks like they probably bought these bad boys because vol ticked up kind of later on in the session. But an intriguing one nonetheless here. Number 2, 16,000 of the DEES 18 puts. Number 3, 12,000 of the DEES 16 puts. Number 4, 12,000 as well. Of the OC 54s, my goodness. And number 5, 11,000 of the OC 18 puts. Let's keep on rolling really quickly out here on the earnings front. And you know what? It's kind of light vol-wise. Not a lot going on from an earnings vol perspective. Did have some names popping off this week. General Mills, KB Homes, and FedEx on Wednesday. And the meatball, if he was here, his beloved Darden restaurants on Thursday. So if you want to see all that broken down, earnings move results, earnings season, and the beloved earnings trades reports, we got you covered over there. TheOptionsInsider.com, the place to go to check it out and learn more. Right now, the season actually getting adjusted up again. It was at par, it was at 100%. Now ticking back up to 102%. So managing to outpace our long-term average by about 4 percentage points. Is that long-term average is 98%. So you want to check out all that goodness out for yourselves. You know where to go. Meanwhile, it's time for us to go right on into a little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, listeners, we have breaking news. I just spent how much time on the show just lamenting the ridiculousness of UVIX. What they're doing with it, I don't know. The product makes no sense. Their strategy for it makes no sense. Breaking news. And I love our Twitter fans. I love all of our listeners, all of our fans, because they made sure the second this news was out, they were blowing up our Twitter with it. Luckily, our producers saw it during show and forwarded it to me. Yes, because everyone's gambler saying finally, and everyone else saying, yes, the news we have all waited for with bated breath, hot anticipation, listeners. UVIX, 1 for 10. It's only 10 for 1. I was hoping for more. But hey, 1 for 10 reverse split set for October 11th. So coming up in about 3 weeks now, we're going to get it. We're going to get reverse split. Now, 10 for 1, by that time, October 11th, UVIX is going to erode down to $1.90. So it's going to be $19 for UVIX. I was hoping for a 20 for 1, get us up into a 50, maybe a 60 handle. Now, that would have been juicy. But hey, beggars cannot be choosers. My goodness. At long last, they have done it. They have done it. They have done it. Indeed, listeners. Wow. Yeah, the news just breaking a few minutes ago. Vol shares, blah, 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 blah. Reverse split, 1 for 10 reverse split effective on October 11th. So there we go, listeners. Wow. I never thought we would see the day at this point, but better late, or in this case, redonkulously late than never, listeners. Wow, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say out there, listeners. I'm speechless. A rare moment, a rare event for me here, but yes, speechless indeed. All right, really quick. Well, it looks like who is joining me out there? Is that the rockingest of lobsters? Are you there, sir?
Hello.
Oh, and the meatball. Wow, a double dose.
If you wish.
I got 10 minutes left to show. My voice is starting to break. Hey, UVIX reverse split just breaking. Did you see that?
No.
Just announced. Breaking news. 10 for 1,
All
October
right.
11th. I spent half the show slamming UVIX for being garbage and not ever reverse splitting. And I guess they heard me. They finally got tired of me giving them a hard time.
That's amazing.
So there we go. It's only 10 for 1. I was hoping for 15 or 20. But, beggars cannot be choosers at this point.
Oh, this is going to be glorious.
This is, for the short amount of time that it lasts until it erodes back to 2, it's going to be glorious. Good times. All right, we got about a few minutes left. Really quickly, let's start with the rock lobster, because he was first. What caught your eye in a mad Fed week of vol, sir?
Well, the fact that the Fed has spoken and the vol's higher than when they started, and it's kind of working its way back. I was hopeful today that like VIX would be below 16. If I saw the 15 handle, I could get excited about and get long again, but didn't happen, so I didn't do it. Actually, I bought some more VIX calls. So, yeah. Definitely the market. I think the market is not liking it. They were looking for some better news on rates, and they didn't get it. So, to be honest, I don't know where we go from here market-wise. It doesn't look good.
Does not look good. Of course, the once and future Dr. VIX closing his shorts last week, so bad timing. I had bad timing as well. I did a little bit of fun nibbling, just a little bit of nibbles. My first trade back in VXX, but not much because I don't trust that product for much. I did a little bit of a put fly just for fun. Obviously, I knew once I put that on, I was like, this is the kiss of death. We are now going lower in the market and higher in vol henceforth, and that's pretty much been the case. So what I'm trying to say to all of you is you're welcome. If you were
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. If you're short the market and long vol, you have me to thank. Mr. Meatball, what caught your eye in this Fed week, sir?
Yeah, I mean, it was the dot plots. I don't know how many times people can say, oh, the Fed's going to change its tune, only for them not to change their tune. But it happened yet again, and the markets took it on the chin. We got bad economic data. Vol really, really, really got a little frothy and has not backed off. We're still hanging around 17, and it's going to be interesting to see whether VIX manages to go green on the day. The S&P was up 26 earlier. It's now flat. Looks like it wants to go red. It's just kind of ugliness abounds across markets.
And you know what's never ugly, listeners? Sometimes, and quite frequently, actually, it is. It's the crystal ball. So let's get to it.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, listen, I'm getting giddy. I've been talking for an hour straight. Not much oxygen left here in the old studio. I know I promised you a kind of just the facts, ma'am episode, but there was too much vol to talk about this week. Too much fun to be had on the old show. So I hogged it all to myself, except here for the end when we get to the crystal ball here. And as we're coming into the end of the show, as the Meatball alluded, the little bit of rays of sunshine we had seemed to be drying up and going dark out here, listeners, because the market, S&P kind of flat, slightly up a little bit now, but still not up as much as it was. Dow red and the NASDAQ up about 0.25%. VIX as of right now, 1671. Let's see, when we kicked off the show, we were at about a 16 even, so ticking up about 0.75 of a point on the show. That means all of our vol prognostications, just throw them out the window. I had a 13 double, so no joy for me. The Meatballs, palindromic nonsense, 1441. And the once in future Dr. VIX, 13.25. Looking here really quickly, a lot of our listener prognostications, our producers will go through all of them, but I don't see any 16 handles. I see 14 to 13 handles. I don't see anything else. So our producers, if you find an errant 16 handle in there that looks good, let me know. But I don't see any right now, which means, spoiler alert, nobody wins for this week, listeners. So let's go around the horn. Let's let everybody play today. Why not? Let's start this time with the greasiest of Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, no palindromic nonsense joy for you. But what are you feeling for next week?
1661.
Oh, 1661. Bet you didn't think last week you'd be guessing a 16 handle this week, did you? But that's where we are.
I didn't. I did guess up. You did guess up,
to your credit.
I got that going for me.
You got that going for you, which is nice. Mr. Rock Lobster, same question. Are you going 16 handle? What are you feeling this time next week?
Yeah, it is very odd. I just have to go with the curve is looking flat and bouncy. So I'll go 1610, just a hair lower.
16.
Little scummy, not usually scummy.
And, I typed it while you were talking, so no one can accuse me of anything here. I'm feeling it a little bit. I don't know if this might be a little bit much to feel, but I'm putting a 1735. We're going to have a 17 handle this time next week. Agree, disagree? Listeners in the chat, you disagree? Come at me. Oh, I'm seeing some 7. Oh, options queen, 1760. I already feel better. If the options queen is on the same handle as me, then I know I'm on the right track, listeners. And I swear I didn't look. I never look at the chat before I make my guess. I want to keep things pure and unadulterated here. So there we go. That's our market for next week. Bet you didn't think we'd be 16 and 17 handles, but that's where we are. And the vol doesn't show much sign of ebbing, at least for today. We shall see. But that's going to do it for what was supposed to be a Just a Facts, ma'am edition, listeners. You end up getting a full jam-packed hour of vol goodness. But before we go, Mr. Meatball, sir, where should folks go if they want more of the dynamic duo of the Meatball and the Rock Lobster?
Go to optionpit.com. We're breaking down vol every single day. You can read Andrew's stuff, my stuff. It's the best. Optionpit.com.
So who's Batman, who's Robin in that duo?
We're Bert and Ernie, not Batman.
Oh, Bert and Ernie. I can see that. All you need is a good laugh, and then you can be Ernie. There we go. So there you go, listeners. Now who's Bert and who's Ernie? I'll leave that up to you to decide. I think I know which one is which, but I'll leave it up to the listeners to decide on that one. That's going to do it for us, listeners. for our broadcast week, at least for all of you on-demand folks. Hope you had a great trading week. Thanks for joining us. If you're on the pro side, hang out in the live. We'll be back in a little bit talking all things weird, unusual, and probably talking ourselves into some fun and or dangerous trades. You want to join the fun? TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, the place to go to get your hands on all of that goodness. Then back again on Monday with the old OB all the way through to next Friday and another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.